Today we're going to talk about manas part 2. So you guys had a week to kind of maybe think a little bit about some of the things that we talked about last week. And now we're going to go into manas again and see what happens. Another peek into our manas. Okay? So I'll review some of the main points from last week. Then we're going to do the flash feelings exercise again. And then I'm going to show you an example of manas unhinged. I'll explain what that means. And then I'm going to tell you the story that I had prepared for last week about Vence the Valentine. Okay? And then we'll have some questions. So let's review some of the main points. One of them is that manas is one of the 4 parts of our mind, right? And it's not the brain. It's actually part of our subtle body. And manas is our emotional mind, okay? It's also emotionally immature. Remember I said, based on my experience, I think the average age of an adult is about 7 years old emotionally. Manas runs on a binary system of like and dislike. Like and dislike. And it acts spontaneously, just like a rowdy monkey or like a baby. But manas is actually made of sattva. It's made of sattva guna, so in its natural state, it's very peaceful, like a peaceful lake here. This lake looks so peaceful, right? There's not even a ripple in it. It looks like a ice skating rink. It's so calm. So that's how our manas is, just like a blank movie screen. But all of our feelings are always getting projected onto it, all the time. So that's why we don't think our mind is peaceful. We can't control our thoughts and feelings from coming. They come. We can't control like what is our next thought or what is our next feeling. But we can control how we react or how we respond to these thoughts and feelings. So we have one option, which is to react, right? We become totally absorbed like we're watching an intense movie in our thoughts and feelings, and we react spontaneously without any deliberation. We just react like a monkey or a baby. Or we can act after deliberating, after thinking, what would be the unintended consequences of my action? Would that be a good idea for me to do that or not? And then you might act. So let's move into flash feelings exercise, okay? So this time, last week we used our sense of sight, right? We saw 10 images and you got your reaction. So this time, if you have it, get out your feelings wheel, and get ready. We're going to notice your first reaction, your first feeling, your gut feeling, for some different sounds. Okay, another sense. Okay? So here we go. Everybody got your feelings wheel? You got your piece of paper? You ready to write your reactions? It might even be helpful just to close your eyes. And so if you close your eyes, you can hear better, if you're just focused on the sound. Okay? So 3, 2, 1, go. No sound is coming. I think maybe my thing's on mute. Sorry, guys.
When you share your screen, you could also check the... The share sound was not checked.
Oh.
Do you know your password? This is your ordinary password with which you open your laptop.
I don't know. It worked.
So no speaker but share sound?
Yeah, this is what I did. Now we shall stop sharing sound.
The sound is off with this. Some speakers are
Turn your speaker off, you guys. So how about I don't share the screen, because there's nothing on the screen, and I'll just play it to my mic. Is there a problem with sharing the screen, or?
No, if you play the sound, then
I don't know how to do that. Can you do that?
yes, I know what it means. So you have to disconnect from the Zoom audio. Disconnect from the audio. So if you click this triangle on the microphone,
Yeah. Yeah, I left computer audio.
Very.
And
Then
then
it should work.
without sharing audio.
Yeah, just
Okay, so it should work now.
explain. The mic is gonna pick it up.
Huh?
That's enough.
Sound 2.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Sound 4.
What's the matter with you? What's the matter with you?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay. Those are our 10 sounds. Thank you guys so much for helping with the audio. Am I okay now, Vilas, to talk? Is it working for me to talk? Okay. Okay, so just take a quick tally of the 10 sounds you heard. Look at the feeling words you wrote down. See how many likes you had, how many dislikes you had. See how your manas did. Okay. So you've just experienced your manas reacting to the input from your sense of hearing. So last week we experienced our manas from our sense of sight, and now from our sense of hearing. You see how quick manas reacts? I mean, it's so fast how it just, all of a sudden your heart might drop, or you start laughing, or you, right? It's so quick, how it's so volatile in a way, but also flexible. It's just moving. So you experience different sounds, and some that your manas liked, and some that it disliked. So notice that the nature, right? We saw like and dislike with the sense of sound, spontaneous, very reactionary. very quick, no deliberation. It's not like, should I feel happy because that little kid was laughing? Should I feel happy or not? Should I laugh myself or not? There's no deliberation, just like, ah, ha, 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 you know? Or if you hear the lion roaring, it's like, woo, you know? Or the waves crashing, it's like, ah. So there's no like stop or pause button, no deliberation at all. It just acts. I mean, it just feels. So it's very emotional. So I'm going to show you now, just take it another step further, about manas unhinged. So when manas dislikes something, right, then the person would be angry or fearful usually if you dislike something. So you want to like yell and curse if you're angry and fight, you know, or you want to like run away, you know, that fight or flight. And some people say also freeze. But you want to do, manas has such strong reactions if you don't like something that you want to act on it. I mean, manas can't act, that's another part of the mind, but still, usually what you'll see when manas is unhinged, meaning like out of control, you know, that you're gonna get really angry and just yell and curse, fight, or you'll get very fearful and you want to avoid or reject something or run away. Okay?
We got it now. We got it. That's.
So this is a very angry, unhinged parrot.
That's the best thing that's ever happened. Don't like those cages either, hey? You hear it?
So basically his owner broke his cage, broke his home. He took his cage down and he started jumping on it, right? And the parrot got so pissed off, and he's a talking parrot, so he just totally started cursing and yelling and everything. And if you really watch manas, you can see how people act like that actually. They act like the cursing, yelling parrot when they get really mad, if they can't control it, you know? So there it is again. And I'm going to show you. Why is it still making a noise? I can't stop it. I can't stop it. How do you stop it, Vilas? I can't stop it. Vilas, could you? Huh? Every time I pause it kept going. I'm so sorry. Okay, so when the parrot saw and heard, right? What he saw and heard got projected onto the screen of manas. So there's the parrot, you see, right? His sense of sight. He saw his owner jumping on his cage and smashing it, right? That's where he lives. That's where he eats. That's where he does everything. And the owner took it and starts jumping on it, right? So he saw that, and he heard the loud crashing sound of his owner jumping on his cage. Those two inputs got projected. That's why I put like a little movie screen here, like a projector type of thing. It got projected onto this blank screen of manas, which is actually a sattvic screen, like we said. There's nothing there, you know, but it got projected onto manas. The snapshot image, you know, or you could say a video clip even, of the owner jumping on his cage, and then the sound of it. Did you hear the sound? It's like smashing. You know, I mean, how would you feel if somebody took your home, a giant came and took your home and was jumping on it? And on top of that, that's his owner and probably his best friend, you know? So how betrayed and angry would you feel if somebody, your best friend, you know, the one who fed you, who nurtured you, in front of your very eyes, took your cage and started doing that, you know? But so anyway, so the starting point of this is what he saw and what he heard, okay? Getting projected onto the screen of manas. And in this, what I'm saying here is that this sattvic, you know, peaceful lake turns into rajas real fast, right? All of a sudden it just is like, so if you look at what happens next, oh no. Sorry, okay, it stopped this time, it stopped, okay. What the parrot thought and felt got projected onto manas as well. Remember last time I was saying in the last class that there's external stimuli? So what he saw and he felt came in through his eyes and ears. But then there's also internal stimuli, which are your samskaras coming up. So what happens was, see over here the chitta? Babaji describes the chitta like little bubbles, the samskaras like little bubbles coming up from a lake. Okay, so that's the chitta. And see how you can't see quite anything? If you didn't see those bubbles, it would just look like a clear lake, but it's not at all. There's like so many samskaras under there. And when something happens in your life, for example, in this case, what he saw and he felt, what he saw and what he heard triggered some scars to come up, okay? And these some scars were feeling, you know, this parrot felt like unsafe, betrayed, scared, confused, anxious, and angry. Maybe not in this life that's ever happened to him because he's a parrot, but maybe in his last life, you know, he was the owner's wife or something, and the owner beat him or something, you know, who knows? So these feelings got projected, they came up from these samskaras from the chitta, and they're also getting projected onto the screen of manas. And the thoughts, sorry, the Zoom thing is covering my thing, one sec. Okay, and the thoughts, the parrot was pissed off, totally pissed. So he was probably thinking, what the hell is this guy doing, you know? He's breaking my cage, this is my home, this is my safe place. So those are the thoughts, and those are the feelings. So 4 different things are getting projected into manas, just from this one short little video clip. Internal and external, both coming. Oops. So then the parrot acted, right? So on that screen of manas, he's got what he saw, what he heard, what he felt, and what he thought. And then he yelled and he cursed. I don't know if, I mean, you probably couldn't see it so closely, but he was on a like little stick and he was pacing around. He's thrashing his head around. He's cursing and yelling. You know, he was really pissed off. He was doing everything he could to just like, you know, I can't believe he didn't get off and bite the owner. I don't know if his feet were stuck or something. You know, I thought he would act too, you know, go peck him or bite him or something, but he didn't. So this is just to summarize. His actions were driven by 2 external inputs, what he saw and what he heard, and then 2 internal inputs, what he felt and what he thought related to that. And they made the perfect trigger to get him to react. But what happens in our normal life is we're not like walking around seeing our minds like that, right? So imagine we aren't aware of what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what the samskaras are that are triggered, none of that. So we just do the behavior, and since we can't see the rest of the stuff, we just get mad at the person. I mean, this time it really was the owner's fault. I'm sorry to say, right? I mean, you should be mad at the owner for breaking your cage. But in general in life, when our samskaras get triggered by what we see and hear, for example, we don't realize it's samskaras. You know, we just only can see out externally. You know, our eyes are going out, our ears are going out. So we think it's that person's fault instead of realizing, but he triggered a samskara that gave me thoughts and feelings that made me act in that way. I mean, for example, like just say maybe this parrot, you know, used to be like in a past life, just say like the wife, you know, and he abused her in a last life, maybe that was a samskara. But imagine that there was a samskara where, you know, in a past life where it like breaking the cage was a good thing, you know, because then they were gonna like melt down the metal and they were gonna make like a nicer, bigger home for him, something like that. So then his memory would be like, okay, cool, yeah, break it more. I can't wait for the guys to come and melt the metal down so I can get a bigger palace, you know. So maybe this samskara was related to like abuse from the past instead of something good from the past. So not every parrot might react the same way. I'm kind of stretching it here, but basically not every person is going to respond the same way to the inputs. You respond differently because of your samskaras. So I'll make a real life human example to show you better. I just wanted to start with the parrot to see manas unhinged, and this is how people act who can't control their mind. You know, when you see people enraged, because they don't have a lot of buddhi working to control it. Okay, so now let's do a practice. I want to practice by telling you a real life story and seeing if you can apply the concepts of manas, the characteristics, to the story. Okay, remember a while back I did it when I was reading from my book, a little part of a story, and you guys were applying the concepts? So this is a different story. It's not from my book, but it's from my life. It's a story that happened in my life. So let's apply the concepts, okay? So here's the manas characteristics. There's 7. There's 7. So you might want to note this down or take a little snapshot of them because I'm not going to keep this screen up when I tell the story. So one of them is, we know that manas receives inputs from the 5 senses, right? This blank movie screen is just receiving these inputs from the 5 senses. And it's also receiving inputs internally from chitta, these samskaras. So inputs are coming from 2 places under the screen of manas. Externally by what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, what we touch. And internally from our samskaras. Those are all getting dumped onto the screen of manas. Okay? Then we also know that Manas is emotional. From our friend the parrot, we saw that. And you know about monkeys and babies. These are all different ways you can see emotional Manas. You also know from your own experience that what we just did with hearing and what we just did with seeing last week, that Manas is like and dislike, like and dislike, like and dislike. Whatever feeling is coming, you either like it or you don't like it. So it works on that binary system. So you can try, when you hear this story, to look and see if you can see that characteristic of Manas as well. You also know from our friend the parrot that Manas is very volatile and reactive. Right? It didn't take him long to start freaking out and cursing and yelling, and right? Very volatile and very reactive. Manas is also spontaneous. It doesn't deliberate. It doesn't think, oh, would that be a good idea if I did that? It just does it, right? I mean, there's other parts that are helping Manas do it, but the feeling comes and then there's an action real quick. I'll put it this way, Manas doesn't have the ability to deliberate. The feelings come, and it doesn't have the ability to ask itself, is this a good idea? Should I do this or not? It doesn't have that capacity. And then Manas is emotionally immature. That's why I say Manas is like a baby, because when you see somebody acting like a baby, you're like, oh, they're 70 years old, 80 years old, 90 years old, doesn't matter how old, but if they haven't done work on themselves, then their Manas will be the one driving. So they can seem very emotionally immature. The body ages, but the mind, especially with all these samskars we have, that doesn't age. Doesn't have a expiration date. They'll go with you all the way to your next life, unless you work on digesting them in this life. And those samskars are what get played out, the feelings, right onto the screen of Manas. Okay, so everybody got the characteristics down? Okay, so let's see what we can find in this story. The story of Vence the Valentine, okay? So this story is not for children, so if there's any children listening, it contains disturbing content, and adults, please take care of yourself also. If you feel like you might be triggered by hearing this, you don't have to stay and listen, or you can listen until I get to a point that you don't want to hear it anymore. Please feel free to go. Or you can turn it off now or leave now and listen to it later when it's recorded, so you can control it yourself, pause it yourself, okay? But do whatever's best for your emotional health. All right. So this is the story of Vence. He was one of my clients. He's an 82-year-old man. He was married for 55 years. And his wife, at the time I had met him, had died 1 month before. So he was feeling very sad, really lonely and bored and depressed after his wife died. I mean, his whole life he was with her. You know, that when those couples, like, it's like half of him was her. He didn't know how to be on his own without her, you know? So he was totally just at a loss of how to live his life. And I worked for hospice at the time. And hospice, I don't know if it's popular in all countries or even in India, but where I worked in the United States, it's very common, and it's a place where people can get support when they're dying, when they're at the end of their life. And I was a grief counselor there, so I would work with people who were dying, and I would work with their family members, and I would work with people after they died as well. I would run grief groups after their loved one died, you know, not after they died. That'd be really weird, sorry. So Vence had just lost his wife, you know, it had only been a month. So it was very fresh, you know, and so he joined this grief group that I was running, and it was of widows. So it was what they had in common was they all had recently lost someone in the past few months, of women and men. So there was a lot of women and very few men, actually. So Vence, you know, he felt sad because, you know, it was Valentine's Day, actually. This story happened on Valentine's Day. That's why I called it that. In the US, that's February 14th every year. And Valentine's Day is like kind of a made-up holiday, basically. I mean, maybe it's from something legitimate, but now you basically just go out with your partner and you have dinner, and the man's supposed to give the woman roses, that type of thing, you know, or a box of chocolates, something romantic, you know. So the grief group happened to meet we met every week, but it just happened to fall on Valentine's Day, one of our group meetings. And Vence had only lost his wife like a month before, you know. So he saw these 4 females, group participants, you know. And of course, they reminded him of his wife. They were about his wife's age, you know. And so that really triggered like very strong feelings within him. So he was flooded with memories, of his wife. The memories, some of them were like, just remembering all their times together, all their Valentine's days together, all the romantic times together. And he felt in those memories, attached to those memories, were feelings of being loved, connected to her, being cared for, being nurtured. They were good memories, But then those good memories triggered bad memories when he realized, oh my God, she's not here anymore. Like, she died. What am I going to do? He felt so lonely, he felt in despair that his wife was no longer here. So that's kind of the backdrop of the story. And so Vince felt sad. So I'm going to pause for a minute because I've told some of the story and I know I talk fast and the story's kind of engaging potentially. So I want you to just think and take some notes on what Mana's characteristics you've heard so far. Okay? Look here. Mana's characteristics. Have you heard any yet? Did Vince receive any inputs from his 5 senses? If he did, make a note. What input did he receive? Did he receive any input yet from Chitta? Did any samskaras come up for Vince yet, you think? If so, make a note. Is he being emotional yet at all? Any emotions? Do you see if there's anything he's liked or disliked yet? Has our friend Vince become reactive or volatile yet? Has he become spontaneous in any way? Has he not deliberated on anything? Have you seen in any way that he's been emotionally immature?
Could you please explain the difference between volatile and spontaneous?
Spontaneous could be good. Like if you're like, hey, do you want to go to Kerala with me tomorrow? I'll be like, yeah, cool. It's positive. But volatile is negative.
Aha. So both mean quickly changing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, and spontaneous something positively quickly
Usually
changing?
Usually. It could be negative, but usually it's more positive. But volatile is definitely negative. If you're volatile, it's like, oh God, watch out, that person's like a bomb about to go off.
Pressure cooker.
Pressure cooker. Okay, so everybody got some points down on our friend Vince? Let's go back to the story and see what happens. Okay? So Vince remembered. Seeing those 4 female group members, Vince reminisced about the decades. Imagine decades. How many Valentine's days he probably had? 55 Valentine's days probably he had with her, Taking his wife out for dinner on every single Valentine's Day. And all, another common thing for Valentine's Day is to write a love poem. Maybe he wrote her a poem or he bought a card with something sweet in it. Like, he was just flooded with all these memories, That's a common part of grief, actually. Oftentimes if the person's diagnosed with something and they're kind of slowly dying, you're not grieving. I mean, you could be grieving, but you're worried about what's happening that day for them. You're trying to help them out, or you're trying to do whatever needs to happen because they're still alive. Try to go and see them or care for them. But then when they die, then a lot of memories come flooding sometimes. Even in your dreams, you'll see that person sometimes. Or memories come. Sometimes you'll have regrets. A lot of different things happen. So Vince's wife only died a month ago, so he's getting flooded with all these memories of her. And he remembered how his beloved's face would light up each year when he'd take her to dinner, and he'd present her with this beautiful bouquet of roses. So there's like probably one of the romantic times, holding hands at the table and the roses. So Vince acted. Without delay, Vince sprung from his seat and approached one of the ladies at the grief group. The prettiest one, the one who looked quite similar to his deceased wife. With a twinkle in his eye and a bold confidence in his voice, Vince asked the lovely lady if she would like to go to dinner with him on this eve of Valentine's Day. Okay? Bold, huh? Vince wasn't messing around. So now let's go back to those characteristics. We talked a few more times, a couple more slides now. So look at these characteristics again. Any other points you could note down of what is Vince's manas doing? What's his manas doing? Let's see. Let's look at the story again. He remembered. So he remembered. Right? He saw these four members. He remembered about all these times, all these memories flashing through his mind of all their lovely times together. He remembered how his wife's face would light up when she got the roses. And then he sprung up from his seat and he approached one of the ladies who looked quite similar to his wife, to his deceased wife. He felt confident, right? He felt confident in his voice and bold. And he asked her if she'd like to go to dinner. You got down some more characteristics of what you think manas might be, what role manas might be playing in these two slides? Okay. Then what happened? Oops. She rudely rejected him outright. She called me outraged and in tears to complain about Vince the Valentine. You see, this lady also had just lost her husband. And she told me, I don't even want a man in the grief group. I don't even want to look at another man. I miss my husband so much. I don't want a husband looking at me. I don't want a husband talking to me. Because usually in the world of grief counseling, at least from my experience of being a grief counselor, the men want to get married right away. They're like 55 years, anyway, I need a wife. Because who's going to cook, who's going to clean, and who's going to take care of me? And the women are like, I don't want a man right away. I'm grieving. You know, they're missing their husband. They usually bond with other women during this time and support each other. And it's like a much more of a heart connection. And so they don't want a man around them when they're grieving. Whereas the man like wants a woman quickly. You know, like, so oftentimes I have to talk to my male grief clients and say, okay, are you sure? Let's like take a breather. And they're like, no, I just, you know, they'll go online dating and just find somebody, you know. So, yeah, but for the women don't usually do that. I'm not saying it's 100% true, but in general, the women are more careful and cautious because they're having a different experience of their grief. So that's why this clash happened. You know, the woman was like, I'm sitting here in the group every week bawling about my husband. How is he so insensitive? You know, I'm remembering, she's bringing like pictures of her husband to the grief group and everything. And then he's like, hey, do you want to go out for Valentine's Day? And she's like, angry. She was so angry, but she was also crying because she was angry at him, but she was also crying because she missed her husband. She also wanted to be with her husband. She didn't want to be with a cheap replacement of a random guy in a grief group, you know? She was like, hell no, you know? So that's the scenario. So now we can't really analyze his manas here, but you could analyze hers. You can put a few notes down if you see any manas activity from her. She rejected him outright. She called me outraged and in tears to complain about Vince the Valentine. So what's her manas doing? You might have an idea.
She revealed her name, Miss Valentine.
Miss Valentine. Vince and Valerina. Okay. So then what happened? Before I had a chance, now at this point, this was like 15 years ago, I was a brand new intern. This was my first job I got, working as a counselor, as a grief counselor. That was my first job I ever got. So I didn't know what to do. You know, there's all these rules you have to follow at the beginning. And once you know it, you know how to follow them. But at the very beginning, you're not allowed to take a gift from a client. You're not allowed to, there's so many things you can't do. So I knew that it was like, I knew there was some problem when she complained, but I didn't know exactly what to do. But I had back-to-back clients, so I couldn't go ask my supervisor. So before I had a chance to get any guidance from my supervisor, Vince spontaneously stopped by my office with a dozen roses for me. So he couldn't get the ladies in the grief group. I think he actually tried more than one. That's what I found out later on. But since all of those ladies rejected him, he's like, what the heck? Why don't I ask my therapist? So he comes with a dozen red roses, and he's like, Happy Valentine's Day. He didn't ask me to dinner, thank God, but he gave me the roses. So I was like, oh, thank you, you know. I didn't know what to do. So I was new and I thought that was nice. I was like, okay, thank you, you know. On my lunch break, I told my supervisor about Vince and I asked her what I should do. She told me that I should call him and tell him I have to make a boundary. And I have to say to him, it's not okay to ask ladies out in the grief group, and it's not okay to give me flowers. So I did what she said, you know? See where this is going? So before I go any further, do you have anything here? So you guys got that one. How about this one? Anything here you can see about Vince's manas? Take a note down. Anything in this slide. Before I had a chance to get guidance from my supervisor, Vince had spontaneously stopped by my office. He gave me a dozen red roses. I thanked Vince and met with my next clients. You see any hint of what any manas there? Got it? Look at your characteristics again, if you can't get it. There's one little thing that might be manas, a hint towards manas. Okay? Then, for this one, this is just me talking to my supervisor, so there's nothing there. I just had to call him and tell him this. So I did that. Vince immediately freaked out. On the phone, he started crying. He said nobody loves him, and he's going to put it into his life. And I'm like a new intern. I'm like, what? Like, it was very disturbing. You know, I'd never had an experience like that. I didn't know. I was just following what my supervisor told me according to like ethical code of conduct, what I'm supposed to do, you know? So he was crying a lot, like very heavy sobbing, you know, and I was on the phone. I'm like, wait, okay. And then he said, I have a gun and I have it at my head. The gun is at my head. And I said, okay, Vince, hold on. Now, what's the problem? Like, I didn't actually have training. I didn't know what to do at this point. And I was an intern at the end of the hall. And all the way down a very long hallway was my supervisor. And so, but I was on like an old-fashioned phone, like not on a cell phone. So I took my thing and I just tried to say anything to Vince, like, hold on now, tell me what happened now. And I'm texting her, Vince has a gun to his head. Please, like, and so she came running down the hall and she's like, what? And she's like, put on speaker. So I put him on speakerphone. And I'm like, Vince, Jackie's here. Remember Jackie? And so she was my supervisor and she knew him, you know. So she starts talking to him. And then I started talking to him. And then she actually got her phone, her cell phone, and she called the police. Because when somebody says they're going to kill themselves, it's not that we can probably do very much about it other than try to keep them on the line, you know. So I kept him on the phone, and Jackie basically called the police. And she said, you know, we have a man, he has a gun to his head. We had his address, thank God, you know. And then she came back after she made the report, and we just told stories and got him to tell us stories and just they told us just keep him on the line. Don't let him get off, you know. 25 minutes.
Wow.
25 minutes, we kept him on the line, you know, just talking and like laughing and telling stories. And so I know this story is very gripping, but what do you think his manas was doing that he wanted to kill himself, but he stayed on the phone with us for 25 minutes? For what characteristics of manas is that? There's a couple there, right? He wanted to, he gets on, he's at that, wait, actually, let's go back. He had a gun. So first, okay, let's start here, right? He immediately starts crying, sobbing. Nobody loves me. I'm going to kill myself. So think about the characteristics of manas that are coming up. What characteristics of manas? Okay, and then how about this one? What characteristics of manas? Now I'm putting a gun to my head. I'm going to pull the trigger, that's it. What characteristics of manas? And then this one, we kept him on the phone. What was his manas doing? He just told us he's going to kill himself. So then what happened to his manas that he can stay on the phone with us and talk with us for 25 minutes? What characteristic of manas is that? Okay. So then the police arrived, thank God. They arrived at the house, and Vince told us, we still had him on the phone, so we could hear like some slamming on his door, and he told us, hey, I'm not going to answer. Somebody's knocking at my door. He didn't know it was the police. We didn't say, oh, we're telling the police, so he's like, somebody's at my door, I'm not answering. And we're like, oh, okay, that's weird. Someone's at your door. Who could it be, Oh. And he said, we're like, yeah, don't answer, And then he's like, and then Jackie's like, well, maybe you should check and just see like who it is. He's like, no, I'm not answering. Who could it be? Nobody loves me. It's Valentine's Day. My wife's dead. These ladies all rejected me. You rejected. So, but we could hear the police knocking and pounding, saying, open up. And we were like, He refused, so they beat the door down. And we heard a scuffle. We heard him going, ah! We heard him being tackled to the ground. And they handcuffed him. Put handcuffs. They put handcuffs around his wrists to keep him safe, So that's, hold on. So we told you this part. Okay, how about this part? So when the police arrived, Vince told us, someone's at his door. But he didn't want to answer. Any characteristic of manas you can see for this? Someone's at his door. How would he know someone's at his door? That's a hint. What characteristic of manas is that? And we could hear the police knocking, so obviously he could too, asking him to open the door. What characteristic of manas is that? Okay, and then he refused. When you refuse something, is that like or dislike? Right? And the police beat the door down. We heard the scuffle, they tackled him to the ground, they handcuffed him, okay? One of the police officers got on the phone and told us, okay, we have him. Meet us at the mental hospital. We're bringing him to a mental hospital, here's the address. Meet us there, where we'll admit him. So I went there with Jackie, and he was crying a lot, he was handcuffed, and it turns out he did have a loaded gun pointed at his head. Then, because sometimes people will say that, and they don't really, but he actually did. They had the gun. So he didn't kill himself, he had to be there and stabilized and get on some medication and go through therapy. But, so on this one, there's nothing too much about Vince in this part of it. So that's the story. I know it's a heavy story, but I wanted to think of something that you could see manas unhinged. You saw the parrot, and this is how it looks in human being. When it's really out of control, manas is completely out of control. There's no buddhi working there. When you have a very strong feeling, a lot of people want to commit suicide when they have a very strong feeling. So that's the story of Vince the Valentine. So we have some time now to answer these questions of what characteristics you observed in the story. Does anybody want to share? What characteristics of manas Krishna does? Do you have the mic?
Yeah, something that I noticed is that maybe in the beginning it's like I don't know, these cars. When I was child, these cars that we do like this and start to get strength and strength and strength. So what I see is that manas start to go like 1 for the first characteristic, 1 to 4. Then next time 1 to 5, then 1 to 6, 1 to 7. And once getting the level of 1 to 7 with the emotionally irresponsible, then all the time goes to the first to 7, to the first to 7, to the first to 7. Because he was all the time having to remember, no one loves me, and again, going back and again, and so I see that manas work generally all of them, and they recharge each other. So once you get emotionally immature, you will remember again something else and increase the feeling and increase, something like that. I was noticed. So, but of course, yeah, they're in the sections, I think that in the first section, it was 1 to 4, like from receive the inputs and then the chitta.
So what I'm looking for is a very specific, I should have been clear with my directions. Tell me one very specific thing that you heard happen and one characteristic. So it should be one sentence. When he was sad, that's manas emotional. That's the answer I'm looking for. Narottam, you give it a try. It's a good analysis, Krishnadas, but I want to give everybody a chance to talk, and I want to hear just real short at first.
When Vince approached the lady in the grief group,
Yeah.
he didn't think about the consequences, and he didn't think
Sorry,
about,
can't hear-
he
when he
did not
approached the lady in the grief
think
group, what
about the
happened?
consequences.
He didn't think about the consequences.
Yeah, and he didn't
Okay.
put himself in the shoes of the lady, that she was grieving and that it wasn't
Yeah.
appropriate. So it
Yeah.
would be the
Number
point
6.
number 6.
Doesn't deliberate.
Spontaneous.
Spontaneous.
Right.
Okay, good.
But not in a positive sense.
Yeah, not in a positive. Good job. That's one. Anyone else? Yes.
So first, when he saw the ladies, this triggered his samskars of all the Valentine's Day and memories
Yeah.
with his wife, and then this obviously first brought up some positive emotions, loving feelings towards his wife, but then when it changed and he realized that she's not here anymore, quickly the feelings became negative, which led him to then approach them and not think about the results of his actions.
Yeah. So let's be specific. So when he, just give me one. I think the very first one you said was,
Senses he saw
Yeah.
the ladies.
so he saw the ladies, and that meant he received input from his chitta of these samskaras and the feelings, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Very good. Okay, Dauji, what do you got?
I got the inputs from all the senses, maybe except the touch sense.
Tell one story, one specific thing. What makes you say that he had an input from the senses? One specific input that he had.
Oh, he was saying beautiful ladies. It reminded him of his wife. So
the input of his sense of sight,
sense
he saw the
of
beautiful
sight,
ladies. That's
the
perfect. That's manas.
Okay,
Yep,
manas.
that's manas.
He
We're just
liked-
breaking it down in a very kind of mechanical
Okay.
way right now.
he liked the company of the ladies,
So that's a like. Yep.
but he disliked the memories it triggered,
Yeah.
and also got the spontaneous
Yeah.
approaching like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then Vince the Valentine Manas is pushing him to reenact the past. I don't know what in the list to match it with.
Okay. So let's move to someone else.
And
Good, Dauji.
Miss, no,
Let's give Malika
couple
a
of more
chance.
things. Miss,
No, Dauji, I'd like Malika to have a
Okay.
chance. Thank you.
I had a, let's say, aha effect in the moment when you were saying that he was on the phone and he said that he wants to kill himself, and then you started to engage him in some positive talk. So that was a very clear that there was something he liked. So his mind, so
Just
he
moved,
could,
right? As soon
kind
as we're
of-
like, oh, what about this? He's like, oh yeah, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, you don't want to kill yourself? Like we are at 25 minutes. I wonder if he just put the gun down. Maybe he, I don't, you don't know, but that's right. So he was so much dislike and all that stuff was triggered, and then we just had one little, hey, how are you? What's up? He just basically gave him a little bit of love, and all of a sudden he's talking about, yeah, very good. Yeah, all of a sudden he was. You had your hand, Kamala? You have your microphone?
So he didn't like to be alone, and he was acting emotionally immature
So be specific. So how could you tell he didn't like to be alone?
because he was trying to find a replacement.
Okay. So that was dislike to be alone, and then you saw him
Trying
trying
to find a
okay.
replacement.
And then-
that's exactly what made that lady angry, because she didn't.
Yeah, don't analyze her. So then
Okay.
what was the emotionally immature? What was
Yeah.
something specific in the story that made you think, oh, this guy is emotionally immature?
Because he didn't care about others, and he was looking only about his need.
Okay. Selfish.
So
Yeah, very good. And also, do you think how he responded when we said, Vince, you can't ask a lady out in a grief group and you can't give your therapist flowers.
then
Is that
became
an emotionally mature response?
Yeah.
His response?
He became angry
Yeah, so it's emotionally immature response.
and desperate.
Yes, that's right. He became angry and he said, I'm going to kill myself. It's like, so that response is not the response of an 82-year-old man. I mean, if he was emotionally mature,
Yeah,
right?
So I cannot get my toys. I
Yeah,
break it.
yeah,
and make
yeah.
it like something like
Yeah, good. Vilas? Good job, Kamala.
I'd like to add on what Kamala just said on the emotional immaturity.
Okay.
So he not only wanted to hurt himself, but he also wanted to punish you, right? That now I'm going to kill myself because it is your fault that you did not accept the flowers and that you set this boundary here to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a good insight.
I think that's very immature also, that he actually actively wanted to hurt you for that.
Yeah, good. And so instead of saying, I'm really sad, this is so hard for me, and I'm lonely, instead he's like, that's it, I'm gonna, yeah, good. And is there somebody, I think somebody has their hand up in the group, on the Zoom, right? Sorry, Tanvi, I couldn't see you very well. It's a tiny little thing. Go ahead, Tanvi.
No problem. I also wanted to add to that moment. I think in that moment his mind was very reactive in the moment, and also that I guess that he received some input from his chitta in the moment when you put the boundary, because I think probably he had some experiences before in the past where somebody put him a boundary, and he got probably angry back then again.
Very good, Tanvi. That's an excellent analysis.
So now you are there and doing that again, and that upsets him so much.
Yes.
Because he must have had experiences where either his boundaries were maybe also not accepted, or other people, some issues around.
Very good. I'll add to that. That's excellent. So basically, how a samskara gets triggered is when there's something that mimics it in your life right now, right? So Tanvi's picking up on a very subtle point, right? Saying, well, some samskara must have been triggered to make him want to kill himself, right? Maybe some other woman must have rejected him, but let's see, was it the wife? No, they've been together 55 years, and their relationship seemed pretty good. But you know what the ultimate rejection is? Death. She wasn't purposely trying to die and leave him, but she died. So that can trigger, that can feel like me saying, no, I don't want the flowers, triggers the fact that his wife also left him. It's a no. The wife is saying, no, goodbye, I'm leaving. She died. So that's already weighing so heavily on him. So then when the lady in the grief group said no, and then when I said no, it's just too much. They're stacking on the samskara of the wife just dying. So that was very good, Tanvi. That was the samskara. Good job. Okay. Anyone else on the Zoom? Does anybody? I can't see if it's just. I think anybody. Purushottam. Yes, Purushottam Prabhu. What do you have? One sec, Bhagavati. I'm going to let Purushottam go. Can you unmute it, Purushottam?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
He became very volatile. He was reactive. Then as soon as he was rejected by all of them, then he became very volatile.
Yeah.
And then become completely emotionally immature. Then he says, like a child, now you don't accept me, I'm going to give up my life.
Yeah, exactly. You got it.
Like a childish behavior.
Very good. You got it. That's right. Good analysis. Okay, thank you. Bhagavati?
Conectando más con su presente, lo veo como un gran apego, impotencia de sí mismo, depresión y desamor de su entorno y del mundo.
She is telling that she perceived that the samskar there, in the present that he was experienced, there was a lot of impotency and a lot of attachment, and that there was a lot of depression and lack of love in his surroundings, reason why he rejected the world in that moment.
So which characteristic and what is it specifically attached to? In one sentence. Which characteristic is?
Emotional immature.
Emotional immature, number 7. And what is the specific part of the story? I know there's a lot of places he was, but what part is she picking up on?
Yeah, the desire of death, taking the life.
Taking the life, yeah. That's a big one, isn't it? Oftentimes when people are suicidal, they don't, it's actually a pretty selfish act. You know, you're not actually thinking of all the people that you're going to hurt, that you're going to leave behind, who have to, you know, be there without you. You're only thinking of yourself, of your pain, you know. So that's emotionally immature. Yes, Vilas. Okay, go ahead, Bhadra.
Haribol.
Haribol, Bhadra.
Haribol, everyone. Pranams, everyone. Just to complete the whole analysis, I would like to talk about when the police arrived and they knock at the door.
Oh yeah.
He was like the characteristic is that he was liking so much talking to you by the phone because he was getting the attention he so much wanted.
Yes.
That he didn't. The next characteristic is that he didn't deliver it properly. That the presence of the police was there, so he decided, like even if he received external input of the sound, that there was somebody there knocking at the door, so he didn't deliver it properly, and he refused. He disliked the fact to like pulled back to the reality that he really disliked. So
good, Bhadra.
This is another thing that emotionally immature. No?
Yes, very good that you picked up on that. That's a good analysis. We didn't talk about that part yet, but you picked up on the subtle piece, right? That he was basically feeling lack of love, desperate, very heavy lack of love, right? So then he has me and Jackie on the phone with him. So that was his Valentine's date. Basically, you know, so Bhadra, you picked up on that. That was his Valentine's date. He got us being like, Vance, and tell us about this, and let's tell you about that. We're joking and laughing. I mean, he was laughing and joking with us, you know. He wasn't sitting there crying the whole time. So that was his date. So you got it, Bhadra. He didn't want to get off the phone. He would dislike getting off the phone. And someone's knocking at the door. I mean, unless his wife all of a sudden came back to life. Otherwise, why would he want to answer? He had 2 dates. He got 2 women on the call with him, you know. So yeah, you were right, Bhadra. That was very good. Good job. Okay, Kanta? Did you want to say something, Kanta?
Yes,
okay.
I was also thinking to them about the police.
Oh.
So yeah, for me it was also like dislike and spontaneous actions. Like he spontaneously didn't want. I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe wrong.
Yeah. Yep. He disliked, and then he didn't deliberate, you know, and then he wasn't even thinking who could be knocking. We're like, who could it be? He's like, I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Basically, I've got you girls, you know. Okay. Great job, you guys.
But also this action of giving the roses to the therapist.
Yep.
Like it is quite spontaneous.
That was very spontaneous too, that's right, and emotional. Yeah. He's like, shoot, I got rejected 4 times, let's keep going, maybe five just... Okay, great job you guys. I hope you got a good insight into manas tonight. Haribol, thank you.